Are you a grower? Are you tired of lugging around too many bottles? Is it too expensive? Is it so confusing? Tired of reading feed charts? Well, guess what? There is an easier way. Introducing the Stash Blend. You can now get your bag of Stash Blend premium additives that you can add to your garden using just about any base nutrients. Go to stashblend.com and get your order today.
Hey,
What's
boys, like the first time we've done this.
I know, this is definitely not the third take.
This is
I guess
awesome.
do it.
Back at it again,
Back at
boys.
it
Good
again.
to see you, boys.
In-person episode for you today. I'm excited for this one. This
Yes,
is good.
live from the FTS Content House, baby. It's been an incredible experience to be able to sit down with you two gentlemen and Wink in the back. Just, hashing things out, man. This is living the dream. Living the dream.
Toka, baby.
And you know how this is possible? You guys, man, for tuning in every single week. We can't thank you guys enough for showing us that this means something to you. And, you know, for you guys that comment every episode, that hit the subscribe button, the notification squad, we
All
see
the
you
yous.
guys, man. Thank you so much for believing in us. It means a lot.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also, another company, another crew that believes in us. AC Infinity, they got our back, literally, quite literally,
there.
up here. You know, without AC Infinity, not only would we not be able to be here, it's, you know, because of them, they helped us get out here, but also our gardens would be nowhere near where they are today. So with companies like AC Infinity, you can automate your entire grow. You can make things so much better, so much smoother, and honestly step your game up to the 21st or 22nd now century.
I don't know what it is, actually.
Is it 22nd century?
Is it the 21st still?
25th.
27th, I thought.
Collectively. Huh.
Put it in the comment section if you're watching on
Which
YouTube.
is it? Yeah, I still
Let
think
us
we're
know.
21st. Until it hits the 2100s, I still think we're in the 21st century.
I like that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. But let me
Just
know in the
run with
comment
it.
section.
Run with
Yeah,
that.
we're smart.
But
We got a good one here
step
today.
up to the current side. Use discount code the stash15 at checkout acinfinity.com. Much love, y'all.
Appreciate it. Yeah, appreciate it. We got a good one here, don't we?
Yeah, perfecting watering your plants. So,
What? Watering your plants? That's a horrible idea. Stop doing
sound
that.
like a noob.
Why are you making content about watering your plants, man? Are you guys running out of content? That's a horrible idea. You noob, you're a plant killer. Those are just a few of the comments that I get when I make videos that are focused on watering your plants. I have got this strong belief that watering your plants is so dang important, and not just because they need water to
Really?
live, but because there's actually a process that goes with watering your plants at any particular time throughout your grow. So I think it's relevant. I know I've got videos on my channel in regards to watering. I know you guys do. And I think between the three of us, this could be a really good, insightful conversation.
yeah, because we go about it different ways, you know? I mean, there's the hand watering, auto watering, right? A couple different methods you can go about it. And I think we've all kind of experimented in different ways. So it's going to be a good conversation, I feel like.
Yeah, and then within watering, there's techniques that you can have, and there's things you can utilize, and there's, I guess, applications and rates and
Yep.
multiple fertigation times. A lot of different layers and realms, I think, of watering that are underutilized and under talked about. Good time
We'll
to
get
talk about
deep
it.
and you guys can soak it up.
We'll go into deep
Right.
end.
And everybody knows you can't trust a man that doesn't hand water his plants. So this will be very interesting to see how this goes. But Chris, what do you got when it comes to watering?
I mean, hand watering, I think what comes to mind right off the bat is just when you're growing with organic inputs, how different it is to water versus when you're growing with synthetics, or at least it can be different. I mean, there's so many different techniques to go about it, but I mean, currently I'm doing the 5% rule. Have you guys heard of the 5% rule at all?
I haven't.
No, okay. So basically, you take the size of your grow pot. We use 10 gallons, for example. 5% of that into the medium. That's it. And that's kind
Oh.
of like the safe route to go about it. You know what I mean? If you're not really sure how much, maybe you're not using a moisture meter, not really sure how much water you're going to give to the plant, and you don't want to overwater, right? So just going 5% of the size of the container is what a lot of people, some people will do 10%, you know, so play around with that. But it's kind of the safe route to do it. Just water in 5%, see how the plant looks, mess with the, you know, lift up the grow pot, maybe stick your finger in there. Some people do that method. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, in a little bit. And then, yeah, every few days, check it. You might need to do another 5%. So it simplifies things a little bit when it comes to organics when you're not using a moisture meter.
Well, and I think by doing that and not using a moisture meter, automated watering, you can kind of at least try to get a dryback system put into place. I think when you're doing a organic media, you know, auto watering is good, but in some senses that hand watering is nice if you're using teas. Now, do you consistently do any teas in your organic media?
I used to, not anymore.
Yeah.
No.
So you could probably I guess automation could come into play there. But then oversaturating the media is a big thing too. You want to be able to keep the organisms alive in there. So having the right amount of watering is important. Now, the beauty of organics, you don't really have to focus as much on the pH with that water, right? And you just kind of make sure you don't have a bunch of chlorine and chloramine in there and good to go.
Yeah, as long as your water is good. I mean, some people do still adjust the pH on their water, even when growing organic. It's a pretty controversial topic on that one, actually. A lot of people will debate you otherwise. But yeah, just water source, water in.
Yeah, see, that's a big perk for a lot of people who are trying to just simplify the watering techniques. If you're going to hand water, it's like, well, if you're dealing with cocoa, you may need to do a little bit more often. If you're dealing with a soilless media like, let's say, peat, you may need to really watch how much you're watering. And then you're dealing with a super soil, you really got to find that groove. So all different forms, whether it's hand watering or auto watering, you got to dial it in before you start getting too deep in the water.
Yeah, this is a good
No pun
general,
intended.
good general rules to follow. I've never heard of the 5% rule. Is that an organic specific?
Yeah, pretty
Rule?
much. I think I actually heard about it. Shout out to Jeremy from Build a Soil. So he's watching his videos, and he had mentioned that. I'm like, it's a great idea, you know, because overwatering is just, it's so easy to do, and it's not good for your plants at all, right?
Well,
So
what
it's
are the
like, okay,
problems
well,
with overwatering?
what's that?
What's the problem with overwatering?
In organic.
Lacks of oxygen in the root zone, and the plants just aren't able to grow as quickly, to put it simply.
That does seem to be the biggest newer grower issue is overwatering. More than underwatering, it's overwatering. Because one would think, oh, I got to totally saturate the media. And
Top's dry.
It's kind of dry in this area. Well, I got to get this little pocket over here too. And it's just that even watering isn't always visual. When it's going down in the root system, it's got to work its way through. And sometimes you'll have those dry pockets that come into place. So people will end up trying to compensate and add another half gallon of water, a quarter gallon of water, and now it's too much. You're suffocating those roots, you know?
Yep. Good general rules to follow. For me, I've never done organic. I've been synthetic since the day I started. And 5% is simply not enough. I'm worried at 5%, I'm going to have to be back in there by the evening to water again.
That depends on the size of the plant.
For
and
sure,
all that
for sure.
stuff,
Size
what
of your
stage
pot.
of growth you're in.
Yeah. For me, the rule of thumb, the general rule that I follow is 10% out is kind of an idea. You know, if I'm in a 5, let's do 10-gallon pot
Of runoff?
of runoff.
Okay.
So
Yep,
soil
of runoff,
drench to runoff.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I think it's very important to water slowly, you know, so that way that water has an opportunity to work its way all the way through the pot. No dry pockets, if you will. But if I'm gonna add, let's say it's a 10-gallon pot. I think that's a bit large for an indoor grow, but I think it keeps the math pretty simple. I'm gonna wait for a liter, I guess, or what? 1 gallon.
Speak American, thank you.
Oh God, I don't even. I'm too high here, but too high in terms of gallons, not my
Gallons,
state
we
of
don't
mind.
do those things.
But no, you're looking for about 10% of the amount of water you put in. For me, in a 5-gallon pot, it's about 1 gallon of water. At that point, I'm realizing that the water's coming out the bottom. So I guess it's almost like 20% of the water going in of their pot size, if you could follow that rule of thumb, but I don't. So I trying to water evenly from the outside of the pot inwards, because I try to avoid that dip that happens in your pot quite often enough. And as soon as that water just starts to come out a little bit, this is just a watering. It's not a leach. It's not a flush, or not a flush, sorry. So I just want to make sure that it's a good, consistent dribble coming out. As soon as it's coming out, I'm not wasting nutrients. That's not the idea here. There's stored nutrients in that soil, or in that medium, and I don't want those to go anywhere. That's my money right there. And if I see it coming out the bottom, all brown, I'm like, not too much. So about 10% coming out.
Yeah, watering to run off 10%. Some people do 15% with synthetics. Same thing kind of with me as well when I'm growing that style. And then, not just saturating the medium to run off, but drying out in between. Drybacks between.
Important.
Yes,
Very
so
important. That's it. Because someone can come in and water it and be like, okay, it's good. 10% came out. Put it in tomorrow. Come back in again. That's way too much. I can already tell you. If you're talking 5-gallon pot,
Yeah.
you're coming in there too soon. That dry period is so important. But Chris, do you let it dry out completely?
For when synthetics,
For
as you let it
synthetic.
dry out to the point, old school method thing I've been doing forever is
Mhm.
lifting the side of the grow pod, sticking your finger down an inch,
Knuckling
knuckle
it.
deep.
Yeah.
If it's bone dry, then it needs water.
Yeah.
So
Rule of thumb, generally speaking, after I water, like I've said in previous episodes, part of my routine at watering is to remove the plants from the tent. Because I have a watering hole or a watering area where I've got a drain in the floor and I can water, and that 10% can just go down the drain rather than into a pan. I got to take the pan out, go dump the pan, maybe do that a couple times because that sucks.
shop vac would be
Oh, that's a
what
good
I
idea too.
use.
Yep, that's a
in
good
that
idea.
You've
case.
gotten intimate with the plant, though. You know
Yeah,
what it weighs
that's part,
like.
just
You
part of my
know
routine.
the whole thing.
That's
Like,
just part of my routine.
That's the part that I've always been like, what the hell, P? Crazy. You know, that's extra work. But it's like you have an advantage knowing exactly when your plant needs water.
That's it.
'Cause you're like, oh, I'm
That's it.
taking it out right now. I can feel the difference.
I got to take that pot back after it's full, and I got to take it back and put it back in the room. So generally speaking, I'm waiting for half of its weight. And rule of thumb is if you can poke your finger in and it's dry till the knuckle, she's probably due for a little more water, and that you're going to notice that that's about half the weight of the pot. So you'll get intimate with it over
Yeah.
time.
Get a little
and
intimate.
It speaks to you.
And you can get more detailed with moisture meters, right?
Well, that's
It's
what I was
like-
going to say. If you want to take it to the next level and you have it in the budget, that's where you bring in moisture meters.
And they're not
Like,
actually
before
that
even
expensive.
automation. I just feel like, yeah, they're not that expensive.
Well, there's
Jam-
cheap ones,
Cheapies,
and then you
yeah.
have digital ones. Like
Yeah.
Blue Mat has a digital, or Sustainable Village has a digital one. I think it's Blue Mat brand.
and that'll be
And
totally
it's like
accurate.
85
That's-
bucks. Yeah, but it's worth it. I mean, you can take it. And
Yeah, that's what I was
You'll
going to
know
say. It's not
exactly.
that bad in the scheme of things. If you can really dial in the science of a dry back and try to hit that 30%-ish range, you'll notice almost a crop steering technique where you're going to see bigger plants. And this is what a lot of commercial grows do. They'll literally time it out so that way they got multiple fertigation processes throughout the day, like 13, 14 times, but they're making sure it dries back super accurately at this certain amount, usually around 30%, consistently, and it retains it. And it's usually in the evening where they're still having fertigation when the lights are off. So it's a science process, and this is me just throwing out hypothesis, but it's like, for example, like competitive eater, they'll eat a bunch of greens to stretch out their stomach more, so they can eat more food. And it's almost like the multiple fertigation, having the plants go from full of water to stretching back with the root system, making it so they can optimize for more growth, versus just slow feeding and it takes it and metabolizes it how it does. So there's a major science when you get past our lifting the pot and finger in and everything there that you can like really drive more growth. But for those of us who don't necessarily have a budget to throw at extra stuff or want to do the extra science with it, these are great rules of thumb or rules of knuckle to help yourself get through near that and the focus of a comparable process of a dry back and not having lazy roots and not oversaturating the media.
Yeah, and just to clarify one thing with the dry backs, I don't do it with organic. I know a lot of people don't do it. The goal is for the medium to be moist at all times and really limit the amount of dry backs because you've got those microbes in there. They need to be active.
Yeah, it's more
Water
for
keeps
soilless
them active.
medias.
Yeah, a soil-less media
Yep.
because
Yeah.
there's not a whole lot of active life other
Yeah.
than the root system. That's going
Whatever
on.
you add to it is really, and
and
that's
it's
a
important.
great point.
It's important to understand the function of your roots too. They're not just there to uptake nutrients; they're there to search for moisture, right? And so that dry period, and when we talk about people that just get into growing, and their most common mistake is overwatering, the roots have nowhere to go. The moisture is there already. So when you say lazy roots, it's like if your food's right beside you, you're just going to keep shoveling it. You're not going to get up and go to the kitchen and grab it. You're going to keep eating it. Same with your roots. If the water's just there, they're not searching the pot, trying to get out.
Transplant one of those plants that has that, and you can see it's
Just
so
just a
visible.
small root ball.
Yeah, and they're
nothing,
like
versus one that's
thinner,
had
you
dry,
know.
they're weak. They're weak. So yeah, generally speaking, you want to make sure that you're giving them a dry period so those roots are searching the entire pot, sending off feeder roots and getting all the way through the pot. And
Little varicose vein looking at
you like that. Depending on what kind of pot you got, you might have aeration and all, or air pruning and such. But that's another conversation. I think that's a great way to start when it comes to general rules of watering. But you're organic. You're both. And
both.
I'm synthetic. So there is a little slight routine difference, and we've already established it when it comes to watering. But let's start right at the beginning. Right at the beginning. So you've got a bean. Where do you start? Because watering is important before you even have a taproot, in my opinion, right? So where do you start when it comes to
Well, planting it into like a solo cup, for example, it's very common for people to do that. I do initial, say, soak of the medium, but make sure the medium is moist enough going in, and then really once the plant sprouts in that medium, there's times where I don't have to water for 7 days. You know, I go a full week, and then the first watering comes in. Now, of course, your environment's going to impact that. The moisture level to begin is going to impact that, right? But you certainly don't want to be adding in water every single day on a seedling. You know, that's how you stunt the growth. Now, sometimes I use plugs, right? Those organic plugs.
Those are great.
Yeah. So having initial soaking to begin on those ones, really hard to tell you how much to initially soak it. You know, rock wool is something I haven't used, so I can't really speak on that one. But
I actually don't recommend rock wool for an environmental standpoint. Not biodegradable, and if you've got peat pots and you got those smart little, use those. Use those. I as someone who's used rock wool way too much, it's horrible for the planet. Sorry.
Yeah, but as far as the initial sprouting, and then it really goes upwards no matter what pot size you're working with, right? If I'm planting into a 1 gallon container, it's still going to look for the same things: moisture level. I'm not going to be watering every single day, even if it's in a little bit larger of a pot. So, yeah, something to keep in mind for the early stages of watering.
Yeah, it's the same thing. You know, what I do start with sometimes I'll use my sprayer, my Mister pump sprayer for watering the seedlings, just because I feel like I can control the amounts that I'm going more. But I use cocoa. Well, I just switched back to soil actually. So I don't lie. I did use cocoa, and I feel like it's a little more forgiving for that slight oversaturation versus using soil. There's arguments both ways, you know, depending on your soil. If it's just straight cocoa and there's no, you know, perlite or any sort of mix in there, so there's no aeration, yeah, it can like suffocate it. But for the most part, I can go pretty hard with the watering to start with cocoa. Soil, yeah, complete same. I feel like there's a lot of overlaps that still come into play, and people think it's totally different, but the's
a lot of
common ground,
There's a lot of overlap.
especially in that young stage when they're still in that
And
seedling.
they're very fragile.
Yeah.
Very fragile. You don't need to go crazy on the water. I'm simple. That's kind of just my analogy when it comes to gardening in general. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Plant it and forget it. Now, I understand for those that the towel method. I always wondered, why would I waste my time adding another step? I only plant 3, 4, 5 beans at a time. So if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. You know, if someone's planting 20, 30, 40, if you've got a 50, 100, you know, if you're on a hunt of sorts, you know, I could understand not wasting medium, a cup, time, energy, soak a paper towel, see that they've got strong tap roots, which ones don't, weed those out, give them your time and energy. Yep. That makes sense to me. I personally only pop in a few beans at a time. Keeping the medium really moist for start is key. I think of beans as babies. They like to stay nice, warm, and moist as they're in the belly, right? They're surrounded by fluid. So I guess you could call it what's
belly stuff.
Belly, girl stuff.
Girl stuff for bellies. That's the scientific terminology.
What's a kid?
Ectoplasm.
No. Embryo? No. Anyways,
ovaries?
No. We suck. Oh God.
Cooties? It's all the cooties around there.
Yeah. But anyways, the seed needs to be warm and it needs to be moist. You cannot drown a seed. Okay? And people don't understand. They're like, oh, yes, you can. Add too much. No. Listen, what I'm telling you. You cannot drown a bean. Okay? People put beans in shot glasses, for crying out loud, and they wait till they float to the top or whatever, sink the bottom. I don't know what the method is. And the reality is you can keep it in water for as long as possible until that tap root exposes. Then you need to start dialing in your water. At a seedling stage, I like to just not worry about it, and I like to keep that medium really moist, moist, not dripping. That's not what I'm talking about. Just like to keep it moist. And then again, as soon as that she pops up above the soil, I'm waiting for that dry to hit, and then I'll start a watering routine where it's same idea with a seedling is that I'm not going to let that little pot dry out. It's going to be about a half. Same rule of thumb, just in a smaller size.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is once you figure out like your ratio of water to media of how much you're going to do, as it increases in size, you change that to fit. There's a ratio. But when you've got a heavy root system in a smaller pot, it's like that water will sit on top sometimes.
Oh, it does. It's
doesn't
hydrolocked, I think is what it's called. When you can't get the water to penetrate the top.
Hydrophobic.
Hydrophobic. Thank you. Yeah, you can't.
None of us here are hydrophobic.
Yeah,
Shout out
we,
there.
we're very inclusive.
Okay.
Uh,
The biggest thing with with different media is they do react differently. So it's like if somebody does use rock wool, it's like a sponge. It's gonna absorb it. Someone's using cocoa, sometimes it will be to absorb it. Soil, I feel like it's hardened sometimes on top, depending. I used to go in and stir up my top often with my hands. Do that less and less. You don't deal with that with a mulch on top or anything like that for organics, but it's like the more those roots develop, the harder it's going to be to penetrate. So you'll see that water sit on top sometimes for a 2nd and slowly go down. But you'll have to wait, like we said
you
earlier.
have to water slow.
Yeah, do it slow, let it go in there, and then go back to it. Like
And light.
Yeah.
It gets to a point. Now we're kind of jumping ahead again here, but it gets to a point where it's like you just add sometimes a few ounces and you let that soak in, and it starts to open up the medium a bit. Where then now you can add a little more because now it's opened up. You add a little more, and then now you've got it. So there's a little bit of aeration inside that.
because it's like the seed. Like if you follow the same ratio forever, not keeping that in mind that the volume can change within there, so to speak, then your ratio will change. But really, it doesn't need to. You just need to slow down and have your patience increase. That's really, I feel like, at least in my case, it's been that.
So we made it through the germination, if you will. Now I say you can't drown a seed, but you can drown a seedling, right? Once it's becoming a plant.
You get down roots.
Right. So is there any major change in your routine, your pattern, your amount, your pH when you progress through the seedling into the veg stage and throughout that period?
I mean, I kind of already touched upon, I'm only watering maybe once within the first 7 days. That's in soil, and you spoke on the cocoa side of things.
That's what's crazy too. Is then somebody's sitting there DWC. They're like, I stay in water, but you know what I'm saying? Like I never stop. What are you talking about? What? How much do I water my plant? What's my plant size? I think different media requires different attention, and then soilless versus it's tough because soilless is a general statement. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, well, soilless media treat it this way. It's like cocoa and rock wool, and peat. Well, those are all technically soilless medias. So, but it's like again the container size and everything there. I used to be the kind that would put from a cup to a 25-gallon pot.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, wasted space.
So yeah. So then how much I would water and how easily it would be able to water was totally different versus now I go smaller to larger and work its way there. I feel like when I'm in early veg, I water a little bit more frequently but less amounts. You know what I'm saying? When I was using cocoa with soil, I'm trying to get that Stella groove back, figure out exactly what's hitting right. But my pot size is a big determining factor. I feel like not everybody veges in the same size. The smartest thing is to go from smaller, medium, large. But I've noticed that recently, the switch from cocoa to soil, I really can feel my amounts and my frequency differences. So if I try to do the same amount, I'm going to see oversaturation, no question. But my frequency, I'm trying to keep up. So I'm lowering the amount of watering each time, but maintaining the frequency. And I need just auto water in that case. I feel like if you want to really dial it in, but in veg, I haven't got my groove back quite yet. I feel I'm still seeing a little oversaturation sometimes.
Things for me change gradually as I go from the germination to the seedling to the veg. Because as a seedling, you're often, although you're following the same rule, I can be watering those guys 2 times a day because I don't want that little solo cup, or in the cases of using the little peat pots, they're often only like this big, and you got them in plugs so that they can dry out rather quick. So I can be in there twice a day just to make sure that they're not drying out, because they can't handle a dry out like your veg plant can, or like a later staged plant can. There's no foliage to store anything.
Well, and overwatering them, that's the threat there too.
Right. So as I progress through the veg stage, it's like I want to get to a point where my pot size is consistent with my plant size, so that the amount of water going in is around that I say 20%, but it's to a point where I'm not in there every day. I want it to be so that I'm watering on a Monday, I'm not doing anything on a Tuesday in terms of water or feed, and then by Wednesday, it's time to water. She's half her weight, which is about regularly a 5-gallon pot to throughout the flower stage. So yeah, a little closer in terms of I don't want to be in there every day, so it has to space itself out. And I think that's important so that you're not in there I don't think you should be in there watering every day. That's just, it becomes redundant. And it's not that, there, as we're stating, there's a benefit to watering more often, but This is an auto watering system that we
Yeah,
refer to
this isn't a
14
Pigeons
times
watering
a day.
system.
Yeah, I'm in there one time, watering can, you know, and I want to make the most of it.
I think this is where the pot size comes into play, and this is why I used 25-gallon pots at the time, is I could water them twice a week.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it was awesome. Only when I vegged for an extremely long time was that 25-gallon pot worth doing. Otherwise, it was just the stupidest, dumbest shit I've ever done.
Yeah.
But it was amazing that I only had to water 2 times a week. And it was because it was such a large container and it could retain that moisture longer. Now, that's where you risk the oversaturation and lazy roots and everything there. But if you're feeding multiple times a day or watering multiple times a day, more the better word, you're going to be able to have a precise amount and not oversaturate. But give it enough where those roots still go for the water, you know? I feel like that's where I did like cocoa better because I can manipulate the crop steering, we'll say, a little better. As over soil, I can oversaturate quicker. So it's about finding the frequency and the amount to dial that in per pot size, per stage, and also per setup. Not everybody has the same, I'd say, capabilities even. You know, for auto watering, it could be something like the wick system from AC Infinity, or it could be Floraflex, or, you know, what did I use? Tornado type of system, or
Blue mats, auto pots.
Not all those can be perfectly dialed in exactly the same, you know? So it's like, you got to figure out your groove for each different grow. Now, you switched, how long ago did you switch to Blue Mat?
Years ago now. Yeah, I've been using them. I've been using them for a while. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we've talked about hand watering so much this episode. Probably want to talk about some auto watering. There's so many different systems out there.
And that they're not the same system, right?
Right.
There's self-watering, auto-watering. Like it's
a wick system, which is kind of self-water. Like, yeah, and then there's like gravity-fed stuff. There's total machine-based. There's water pumps. There's ebb and flow. It's crazy when you really look at the variety of different systems. There's just no, like, here's the answer. It's based on your system and setup.
Right. Yeah, but the blue mats, I mean, I like the blue mats. The carrot system basically dripped from the top down. I have it gravity fed. So it's hooked up to a 14-gallon reservoir. As long as the reservoir is above the plants, just getting gravity fed into it. Just the knob on there to kind of, well, first you water your plants, get the plant to the ideal moisture level, then add in the blue mat carrot. Then you'd adjust the knob the way they specify, and then your hands off from there. It's going to drip down as the medium dries out. It's going to drip down water onto the medium and stay at that consistent moisture level. So, yeah, I mean, if you really want to dial in your watering and get something like that, auto pots is another thing I've used. I can talk about that real quick. That is same thing, gravity fed. So I had that hooked up to a reservoir, come down. Although it comes down into like the bottom bottom saucer of the auto pot, and it wicks upwards. And so before you plant your plant in there, they advise to, number one, there's a copper disc at the bottom of the auto pot. And then you put perlite on the copper disc. Then you put your medium. You put about an inch or so of perlite. The reason why there's a copper disc there is because the roots could just grow right down into it. They grow into the auto pot system and actually clog the whole system. That's why they have the copper disc there. And then the perlite provides it so it doesn't just over water, right? If you just put soil all the way down to the bottom, it'll over water it. Now, yeah, that one's another one that's just, it's automatically going to take up water, wicking downward, and your hands off. Just make sure your reservoir is full, you know, top it off as needed. You know, I'm usually in there every day checking it or whatever, every other day, potentially adding in water if it needs it. And it's hands off from there. So,
yeah, see, there's so many amazing systems out there. I used the Hydrolock drip right. That's what it was. My stoner brain slowly put it back together. It flowed like a tornado. It wasn't called
like
tornado.
A toilet.
You know what I'm saying? This was ran by a pump that had to be put into a reservoir, which then would flow out via PVC pipes that would make set up to basically, it would do like a mist that would go against each other that would make almost a tornado-like technique that would keep the whole pot evenly watered at, you know, perfect amounts. And it wouldn't have, no matter if you had a 5-gallon pot or a 20-gallon pot, the way it was set up around the stem itself, the stalk of your plant, it would evenly disperse it out like a UFO sitting on there. It was pretty sweet. Now, with that, I was able to feed, at the time I was feeding and watering 13 times a day. And I was doing
13,
baby. Doing an EC of 2.9 consistently in flower. So, I mean, it was kind of pushing it, you know. But then when I switched to organics, I tried to do the same thing with watering 13 times a day. But I didn't change the amounts that I was watering.
Oh,
and I needed to drop that significantly. And I way oversaturated it. So machine learning, so to speak, is the thing that we're missing from some of these machines. Can I AI it? So I'm just like, here's what it is, here's what it is.
Do time, baby.
You got to do some math, you got to do some learning, and you got to know how much those plants need for water before you just try to automate it, you know? With
That's
the
probably
systems
going
you
to be
mentioned.
the future, man.
Yeah,
Auto
100%.
watering system with a moisture meter, digital moisture meter hooked up to the water system.
All
pH,
AI let you know the best based on what it learns, you know? Like, let it sit in here for 30 days and it'll learn your whole growth.
It could be like a system where it's like a funnel system. You got your nutrients all lined up. You know, you dial it into the chart recommended by your nutrient provider. Dial it in, and it just disperses, drips the nutrients in to the water.
Do you hear that, AC Infinity?
And then whoop into your reservoir.
this.
And then you either, you know, you want this, you know, or just water. And,
You know, I think this is where the evolution of the garden goes, but it also becomes the disconnect. Because then that person, when that you say, oh, lift your pot, you know how much water's in there, they're like, well, I have no fucking clue. My electricity went out. I don't know what, I have no idea how to feed this plant.
yeah, but you know what? In a way,
Yeah.
it's like people are, you know, people still know how to do math, and we have calculators. You know,
Not everybody.
Yeah, but not everybody did. You know, it's like people still know how to ride bikes, and we have cars.
Not everybody.
You know, bikes are a little bit slower than cars.
But you know that they have two wheels and they can get through more places that are harder for cars to get through.
That's a very good point.
Very fun
Touche.
fact brought to you by
Firehouse Subs.
Firehouse Subs.
But is there another watering system that stands out?
Floraflex. I think Floraflex tapped into the local people the most, the home growers, very well. Kind of gimmicky, in my opinion. I think the biggest proprietary piece for them is definitely the container that sits on, or the top part, the actual like manifold that sits there. I don't know if that's even the right word, but you know, a lot of the stuff are green too. I don't want to knock Floraflex, great company, awesome stuff, but it always grinds my gears when like I see like fish tank equipment and stuff like that branded for our plant, because then I'm like, damn, that costs way more money now because it's green. Whereas when
it was a
just
fish
a
tank
plastic,
filter,
yeah, you know,
$4.99.
yeah.
That's $29.99.
But they've got some really nice proprietary stuff that's specific, like their molds and things that are unique for them. And what's great is you don't have to get the whole kit. You can buy bits and pieces. Almost every company has bits and pieces. Even with Blue Mat, you can get the system, the whole kit. Or if you want to try to, you know, MacGyver it or MacGruber it, if you're like me, you can just buy bits and pieces and do it, which is really cool. You can set things up just to your specifics, you know?
That's very cool.
Without a moisture meter, I feel like you're still
Guessing.
kind of guessing a little bit. You know, you gotta figure out exactly what your plant likes then, and then look at the plant and let that know.
That's good.
You know?
How about earth boxes? You know,
Very
forgot
cool.
about that one.
Over my head,
Very,
Playboy.
very
Sounds
cool.
amazing, but I am.
It's B a dig. I want to give him a shout out, man. He actually on my Patreon, he shared his earth boxes, made them by himself.
Yeah,
And
I was gonna say
anytime-
DIY. You can do that same method, the wicking up method.
and it looked like, again, we're talking DIY, that like you could have slapped your logo on it, shipped it on Amazon, and I would have been like, wow, that's a manufactured piece. It looked really cool. So yeah, those are really neat, really neat.
I know
Also,
some people doing with 5-gallon buckets, basically 5-gallon bucket, and then they've got their PVC pipe going all the way down, feeding it to the bottom. And it's basically just an area where the water can be stored at the bottom, and then it's connected through like just one piece of soil, right? I don't know if they're putting perlite in there or what, kind of like the auto pots, but it's not connecting
It's
to
just like
all of the
wicks it.
soil. Yeah, it wicks it up from one area, and it keeps the medium moist. And yeah, people are doing it DIY, and they're saving a ton of money.
and great ways to do it yourself, and it's a great way great way to stay sustainable. Never should have
It's a
started
tough
that
one to say. That's why we just did
Never
it in one
should've started that
episode and
sentence.
didn't want to
Yeah.
keep saying sustain.
Great way to
Sustainable.
fade out on this one, I think, is do you guys change anything for right before harvest when it comes to watering? I got a kind of way of determining when harvest is around the corner for me when it comes to watering, because you touched your
I moved it towards me.
I told you not to touch it.
Moves it towards me, and I'll just hold it for the rest of the
the idea that when my plant begins to consume less water towards end of flower, that's a pretty good determining factor that I can start weaning into maybe some tail end nutrients. Whether you're going to increase your sugars and phosphoruses. But normally she's going to consume less. When I was going every other day on the water, now I'm maybe every second day on the water, even every third day on the water.
Good point. Yeah,
Yeah.
really good point.
I let
Same
my
thing.
plants slowly dry out. I don't know if that's like a leach system in itself.
No, I wouldn't compare it to leeches.
No, but I'm
because-
saying like it's not like leaching like that, but then the fact that like it's slowly dropping off.
yeah, I just think it's not using as much. Like you're giving her more nutrients of few. You know what I mean? So she's not taking up as many of a
As much and as
variety.
frequently.
Yeah, like you're going to be increasing your blooms in, like I said, your phosphoruses, but you're not increasing your nitrogen. You know, there is no CalMag after week 6, so she's not taking that up. She's not working for it. So she's just focusing on your later half, which maybe that's why I'm
She's
bro
getting
science.
old, man. She's not transpiring as fast. She's dying.
She's still beautiful to
Well,
me.
That's what I'm saying. Like I feel like we in the grow community use words as literal things. Like leaching is like a verb of something, but we use it as a noun, as a technique. Well, leaching is flushing is it's like we're leaching it off of nitrogen.
Yeah, it's a description.
Yeah, so it's like I feel like that's something that less and less growers do because it's like push it, and they're not realizing that they're hindering the performance more. It's almost a bell curve kind of thing with feeding and for watering. I feel is you can go low, hard as hell, chill, like work your way back as it's you don't push a dying person to it's all in with nutrients. It's like keep them all right, give them some stuff and keep them alive. And I think that's where you slowly get that with your plant. You give it that weaning off process. Maybe weaning's maybe better.
Just to finish off, do you guys water right before harvest?
I don't.
What do you mean, like
Like,
water? And okay, I'm chopping down
let's
the
say
plant.
2
and
days
then-
later. Let's say if you
I
water.
would, yeah, sure. Yeah. If the plant's got a couple, even if I'm gonna harvest the next day and the plant needs water, sure.
Water.
Yeah, if it's bone dry, like it's I can't even. It's gonna fall over even.
It'll
at that
dry
point,
out on the plant. Even when it's still attached to the roots, the flowers will start to dry out.
That's right. That's right.
Some
That's going
people
to speed up your dry.
Some people, that's how they dry, is they just leave it in the pots.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, I've seen
just
some
let it
crazy
dry
results
while
with
it's
that
still
actually.
intact.
Where I had a buddy who was like pulling his stuff off of the plant to smoke. I was like, what the?
I've done it before and I've over dried it.
Yeah,
I've shot
he did
myself
it.
on the
You
foot, man.
squeeze
It's
it
so
and
hard to
it's-
not over dry. Your environment needs to be
Because you're
perfect.
switching from, like, if I'm like I've done it because I got lazy and I was like, I can go a little bit longer. I'm not going to be in the house for a little while, and boom, hit it. But it's like that's because your late veg environment is not an ideal environment for curing or drying, for that matter. So because you're pushing higher freedom units, so you're in and around the 85, and your humidity is like what, 35, but an optimal dry would be the 60s, 60, right? So it's going to speed up. It's going to dry out faster when we don't water it and let it kind of die off towards the end.
Well, for the longest time, I would stop watering for the last week, and I'd let the plant just completely dry out. And I'd never noticed any adverse effect for the plant itself, except for the plant falling over if it's not a trellis. Like I would have plants completely fall over.
flopping all
and
over the place.
Top heavy.
Yeah, too top heavy. But otherwise, a lot of times I'd let the plant dry out and then I'd harvest it. Like right when it's just about needing water really bad, and I'd harvest it. Bro science to me was like, oh, all of the fighting to stay alive is going to be energy. No science behind it that I had.
Combs, bro.
Yeah, no science I had behind it, but it felt right.
Gosh,
And anecdotal evidence backed it. So it worked out very good.
that was awesome, guys. That was a great conversation.
Yeah.
If there's anything we missed, I think we could have hammered that one out. But of course, we got lots of eyes and ears that are going to be watching and listening. If there's anything we missed, please let us know in the comment section below. Not only do we want to hear what you guys thought we missed or anything you wanted to add, we love listening to you guys, what you have to say in regards to this show.
Most
it's
of you.
it's an entirely new setup. You guys have seen the episodes by now. We love doing this, and we love hearing from you guys. So let us know in the comment sections below.
Yeah, and if you're not on YouTube and you're listening and you want to join the conversation, well, youtube.com, we're From the Stash over on YouTube. Check it out.
Or from thestash.com, right? From
Even
thestash.com.
better.
Yeah,
From the
and if you are
stash.com.
listening to on any audio platforms, if you got some spare time, if you could leave a review of the
that'd be
channel of the podcast, that goes a long way. That goes a long way. Your
Yeah.
your
Cheers
reviews
to that.
really help pop things up.
Oh, just me?
Cheers, guys. My drinks over there. But huge shout out to AC Infinity for supporting the show. We couldn't do this stuff without you. It means a lot to us. But I think we're out of here, boys.
That's it.
That being said, Rob, Mr. Grow It, Pigeons 420, and Wink on Ones and Twos is From the Stash. We'll see you guys next time.
Peace.
Peace.